In this video, we're going to look at the debugging tools for PowerShell Universal. So the debugging tools allow you to actually set wait debugger commands inside your PowerShell scripts and enter the debugger to see what's going on. So debugging is supported in PowerShell 7 and the integrated environment. So in order to use this, what you need to do is actually create or set a wait debugger command inside one of your scripts. So this works in APIs, scripts, and dashboards. So I have a simple API here set up. And if I go to my edit details, you can see that I have a couple commands. First of all, I'm returning the process ID of the current process. Then I'm calling wait debugger. And then I'm starting a notepad process and finally returning the ID of that process. So what I'm going to do is actually I'll start a new terminal here. I will copy this PowerShell command to invoke this REST method. And I will execute that. And now you can see that the invoke REST method hasn't returned, and that's because we're waiting on a breakpoint. If we actually click the platform debugging feature here, you'll see that my breakpoint is being registered. So process ID 38516 and run space ID 92 is currently waiting on a breakpoint. If you click this debug button, you're going to go into the debugger terminal. And if you remember in my endpoint, I had a process variable. So I can actually type $process, and it's going to print out what that process is. And if you recall, I was getting the current process ID, which is the universal server because I'm using the integrated environment. The next thing that I could do is I could either continue, which would cause the script to just continue to execute all the way to the end. But I could also step over, which means I can step through the script. So if I click step, you can see that Notepad opened, and that's because that was my start process line within my script. And if I look at the process variable now, I had passed through on my start process call. You can see that Notepad is now my process variable. So if I click continue here, what you're going to see is this is still waiting, but if I click continue, it returns the process ID of Notepad because it pretty much stopped debugging. So it's kind of a great way to set breakpoints and then execute commands in the scope of particular things you're trying to debug. And one thing to note is that you do need to turn this on. It doesn't automatically work this way. Inside settings, environments, you're going to need to make sure that you have the enable debugger setting set. The reason it's off by default is just that it's a performance a bit of a performance hit when you have it enabled. So you just want to enable that, do your debugging, and potentially turn it back off to kind of resume having high performance for your run spaces. So in this video, we looked at the debugging tools inside PowerShell Universal.